Hey, hello. Welcome back to our SIParator for AWS online training. We're about to enter in session number 7. Uh, uh, this is the first of all the SIParator configuration related. This is the networking one, the first one. So, let's move on. Okay, the first set of configurations that needs to be done is associated to how we are going to allow access to the separator for configuration purposes. Uh, so we are going to go to the basic configuration section under access control. This access control will allow you to define which interfaces, physical interfaces, are the ones that will allow access for configuration. Then you can define which type of protocols are going to be used for configuration. Okay, and there are three different options: HTTP, HTTPS, and SSH. Uh, so you can associate, for example, in this example here, we have HTTP is allowed on the Ethernet 0, okay, and HTTPS is allowed on any interface. When you don't select anything, you are referring to an interface. Here you define the ports, and in case of using 443, which is the HTTPS, you have to select which certificate and what type of TLS protocol is going to be used. SSL, SSL version 3, TLS, TLS, and SSL, etc. Then, uh, for access, you're going to need to authenticate the user. So the user can be authenticated in two different ways. One is a local database, and you can create the users and passwords locally, or you can refer to a Radius database, an external Radius server. There is a section to configure a Radius server. Or you can also enable both local user and Radius server authentication. And finally, the last section here is configuration computer. Here is where you are going to define from where uh, are you allowing access to for configuration. You have to know the difference when we say from where uh, compared with when we say to where. I mean, interface Ethernet 0, Ethernet 1. Here's where the request for configuration will land, and here is where the request for configuration can be generated and accepted. And here you select the DNS network address, uh, the mask, and if it is going via an IPsec peer, you can select the IPsec peer, and you select which protocols are the ones that will be um, authorized or allowed to this specific origination address. For example, here we are allowing from anywhere, but only in this case, all of them are selected, but it could be only HTTPS. Then you are going to allow management from a remote site, no matter where it's located, from a remote IP address, and but only HTTPS, and you don't enable HTTP or SSH. Okay, so uh, the next thing is every time you do a configuration for a separator, you need to define two things. One is what is the separator type in terms of networking, okay? And second is what is the separator mode, okay? The separator type is related to the different topologies on how the separator can be deployed. When deploying in Amazon, most likely the topology that you're going to use is DMC LAN, because in our case we have two networks. So one is going to be the DMC, which is what we call the subnet public, and the LAN is what we call the private subnet. So DMC LAN can be selected from this pull down menu here, and then because we are going to use the separator has the NAT device for that network, for that subnet, for the internal, for the private subnet, uh, you're gonna see that the default value for separator mode is separator. We need to change that to firewall. And what you need to do is to select change operational mode and click on firewall and reboot. Um, a suggestion is don't do the two changes at the same time. First do the separator type, and once you have selected the one that you desire, save and go to the apply configuration, and then came back here and do the firewall and reboot. Okay, so this is the last step. The last step when you're using the firewall and reboot, and you are changing the mode to firewall mode. That doesn't mean that you are losing any functionality on the SIP side and the separator mode. The firewall mode is an extended separator with additional firewall functionalities. So, and this is the very last step needed to complete what we said in a previous session. Uh, to use the separator has the NAT instance inside the private subnet. Okay, another component, important component here is what we call networks and computers. Uh, this is on the network section. And network and computers is a way how you can define names associated to specific IP addressing. For example, here we're saying that in the line number one, this one here, we are saying IPPBX is a name that we are assigning to the IP address 10.0.1.149. This is the lower limit, and the upper limit is the same address. So there is only one address. And this is a way that we will be able in the other sections of the configuration to refer to a network named IPPBX. So you don't need to type the IP address. This is very useful to simplify configuration. Uh, it allows also to define a hierarchy of two levels. Here I have an example. For example, we are creating a name called access, and this name called access is a um, compound by the name, the subgroup internet and office. And you can see that internet is already defined here, and internet is the default any address 000 to 255, 255, 255 on the interface internet 0. So this is the internet. And Office is 192.168.200 to 192.168.200 to 55. Okay, so those two are we are calling them access. So whenever I use the access name in any other configuration section, I'm referring to these two subnets or these two address groups. So in our example, we are going to create one name for the IPPBX, one name for the internet, one name for the office. The office is a remote office where the PCs, the administration laptops are located. We're going to create a private LAN, which is the 10.0.1.0 to 255. This is the subnet that we created inside the VPC as the private name. But the public LAN will be the 10.0.0 to 255. We created one called zip trunk. I'm hiding some of the sensitive data here, but this is because there is a zip provider that provides two zip proxy addresses. One is a failover of the other, and so we can group them in a single name called zip trunk. And also we are creating access. I already explained this one. Another one that is called AWS VPC uh, um, to group the two subnets under a single name. Okay, so the main purpose of this is just to have comprehensive names to specific address groups that we will use in some other sections of the configuration. Okay, the next thing is the network interfaces. As you can see under the network menu, we have an option here called all interfaces, but also you have one tag for each one of the real interfaces, Ethernet 0 and Ethernet 1. Okay, so I'm showing here Ethernet 0. We're gonna assign a name to make more clear what Ethernet 0 is. We are calling it outside. Uh, we should call it private, for example, also. You can activate or deactivate a specific interface. You can assign IP addresses. Um, in this case, we are assigning IP address static, but if you put DHCP, the IP address that will be assigned is the one that AWS assigned when you created the instance, or the one that you selected when creating the instance. You cannot put a different address here. If you are using a static, you must use the same IP address that you created or the um, Amazon assigned it to the instance. Um, you can put it static or dynamic, DHCP. So anyway, also we are assigning a default route here. We are assigning default route to the default route that is predefined by Amazon, the 10.0.0.1. Okay, and this default route is in the Ethernet 0. We are going to do something similar for Ethernet 1. The only difference is that for Ethernet 1, um, we are not defining a static routing anyway. Okay, and then another component that we need to um, enable is inside the network, there is a tag called NAT, and you have to enable NAT. And remember that the instance is sitting in a public subnet, but in reality, this is a DMZ. So the real IP address it has is a private IP. And there is a public IP assigned via Elastic's IP that will be NATing one-to-one with the ingate. So you need to enable NAT, create one NATing rule saying that you are NATing from the uh, private subnet, the Ethernet 1, okay, to the Ethernet 0, to the public subnet. Okay. So that's all that what you need in terms of networking. Um, we want to see another sections now regarding the other topics on configuration. Um, remember, as usual, that you can send questions or comments to trainingquestions@ingate.com, and I hope to see you in the next session. Thank you. Bye.